In 2017, professional troll turned merchandising genius Peter McKindo formed the faux conspiracy theory birds aren't real, a movement with a very simple yet 100% factually accurate ethos, which states that between 1959 and 1971, the US government killed all the birds and then replaced them with drones in order to spy on the populace. Birds Aren't Real, or BAR as I'm going to call them, have since made several claims to really round out their theories, such as birds sit on telephone wires in order to recharge themselves, birds poop on cars in order to track them, and my absolute favorite, US President John F. Kennedy was in fact assassinated due to his reluctance to kill all the birds, which honestly makes a lot of sense as long as you just don't ever think about it. But personally, my favorite thing about BAR is the merch, which they call activism apparel. Just go onto Amazon right now and type in birds aren't real. You'll get hats, you'll get tote bags, you'll get stickers, you'll get this sweet tank top that I've totally been wearing to the gym, and even cups that even further expound upon the lore about exactly which type of bird is used for what type of surveillance. So obviously pigeons are for city surveillance and seagulls are for coastal surveillance, but parrots being linguistic analysts and geese being ground attack drones. Mwah. Chef's kiss, perfect conspiracy theory. I would say shut up and take my money, but I already paid $9.99 for that tank top, so you already have it. Okay, so why am I telling you about BAR? Obviously, it's a joke. It's a made-up conspiracy theory made up to make fun of other conspiracy theories, but there's something to it, right? Buried deep beneath the layers of internet humor, there's a little nugget of truth. A chicken nugget, if you will. Get it? It's birds. Anyways, the point I'm trying to drive home here is that BAR asks the question, what if animals were used as spies? What if your dog was secretly a Soviet sleeper agent? What if your bunny was sending secret messages to an Iranian dictator? And well, the world is a fucked up place and governments have far too much money and not enough starving citizens to feed. So let's explore the seriously disturbing secret history of animal espionage. Before we get into it, a big thank you to everybody who watched my last video on the secret history of government cheese. It was hands down the most popular thing I've ever uploaded to the internet, so thank you all for watching. I'm so glad that you guys liked the topic as much as I did. A super special thank you to Jill Bearup, who reposted the video in the community section of her channel and who I'm pretty sure is responsible for 90% of the views on that. So thank you so much, and if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend you go check it out if you like deep dives into truly strange topics. Before we start this video, I do want to give just a very small disclaimer. So the way that I've structured this video, the information that I'm going to share with you gets progressively darker and also progressively more interesting. That kind of means that the last section of this video has some really dark ethical considerations, but at the same time is one of the most interesting things I've ever researched. So do me a favor, and if you don't have 45 minutes to listen to a video on the history of animal espionage, just skip to chapter 3 and come back and watch the rest later, because you're gonna want to know about that bit. That's the really fucked up bit that made me seriously consider what we're doing here on this planet as a race. And with all that said, let's get into the video. Part 1. Niet, kitty! Niet! Full transparency, whilst I was researching this video, I came across so many examples of animals being used in military operations dating all the way back to ancient Egypt and beyond. You had Ramses II, who apparently had a lion that fought with him in a battle. You had war elephants being used across Asia, which apparently was so common that Alexander the Great developed a secret weapon to take down war elephants, which apparently was just to release a bunch of pigs into the battle zone, because if you're a 2-ton elephant, the sound of squealing piggies is not the one. You heard it here first, folks. Peppa Pig defeated the Persians. I always knew Peppa was that girl.
His warmth was in their flesh, George. An offering had to be made.
But we're not going to be covering any of that today, okay? We're not interested in the military history of animals. We're specifically looking at animals used for espionage. So I'm not really going to be talking in depth about carrier pigeons or sniffer dogs or war pigs. No Putin fighting a lion, riding a bear, because if I did, this video would be 11 hours long and we just don't have time for it. So let's start off with probably the most infamous example of animal espionage. Operation Acoustic Kitty. Operation Acoustic Kitty was a short-lived and very unsuccessful attempt by the American intelligence services to spy on the Soviets during the Cold War using cats. Picture it. America, 1960, the height of the Cold War. Russia and the US are fighting about communism or something, and to assert their dominance over the global stage, they took to starting like really petty little fights with each other. But because they knew that they couldn't fight each other one-on-one without just destroying the entire world, they did it through other people, through like third parties. We call them proxy wars. It's like really bitter exes trying to destroy a friend group after a particularly nasty breakup. And so, in order to get a competitive edge over the Ruskies, America... Oh, this is stupid. Okay. The Americans decided to take 5 years out of their time and spend $20 million to surgically experiment on cats and create a Franken kitty, complete with a 3/4-inch transmitter embedded into the base of its skull, a microphone in its ear canal, and an antenna made from fine wire and woven all the way down its tail to conceal it. As always, I will be putting my sources on the screen in a sexy little lower third. Okay, so we turned the cat into a cell phone. Now what? I guess we should try and train it. And so they tried to implement the principles of American operant psychologist, Burrhus Friedrich Skinner. Excellent name. And he believed that an animal's actions could be shaped via behavioral reinforcement within a controlled environment, which is really just a fancy way of saying that he made these boxes called a Skinner box, and inside these boxes he put some steamed hams and then like got some rats and then made them do tasks in order to get the hams.
Well, Seymour, you are an odd fellow, but I must say, you steam a good ham.
I will go so far out of my way to make a Simpsons joke, and you cannot stop me. So I guess the overall idea here is that they would turn the cat into a listening device, and then they would train it to just go up to people and sit next to them for an undetermined amount of time. And I'm also not quite sure how they would indicate to the cat who it was supposed to go up to. But anyway, that's what they did. The problem was that much like me during sex, the cat just kept wandering off every time it got hungry, which incidentally is also why I only have 3 ways, so, you know, someone else can take over whilst I go get a snack. And so instead of realizing that, you know, maybe a cat just wasn't the best suited to this particular kind of task, they just cut it open again and then shoved in a wire to cut off its hunger responses. And there you go. Bish bash bosh. Cat trained, cat not hungry, cat ready to go. Agent Cuddly Whiskers primed and ready for field testing. And so, with $20 million of state-of-the-art surveillance tech, the CIA handlers let the cat out of the van and it approached its target, only to immediately be hit by a cab and die. Yikes. And what's worse is that they kept this a secret until like 2001, when a Freedom of Information request submitted to the CIA made them release documents on Acoustic Kitty. And having read the documents by Skydaddy, were these people pleased with themselves? Maybe it's just a symptom of the fact that you wasted 20 million on shoving a microphone up a cat and you had to justify it somehow, but you're reading these documents and they're just like, yes, this is one of the best ideas the CIA ever had. Stunning success all around, excellent advancements in technology. Apart from the fact that it didn't actually work. And I'm sorry, but stuff like this just makes me so angry because it's so fucking stupid. $20 million. $20 million. You know how much good you could do with $20 million? And this was in the 60s. None of the articles that I read mentioned whether or not their figures had been adjusted for inflation. So let's just assume for a second that they hadn't, and this was $20 million in 1960s money, because that is $204,975,000. So by God, I hope their figures were adjusted for inflation, because if they weren't, $200 million to mic up a cat. Personally, I would just like the CIA to release more files on this. I want the whole roster. I want to know how many people approved of this. I want to know why they thought it was a good idea. I want to see the vision. I want to see someone's written justification for this and how they managed to convince other people that this is the direction that the CIA needs to go. Stop being cowards. Release the Operation Audio Pussy files, okay? Chapter 2. What do you call your mother at the beach? In 1959, the US Navy launched the Marine Mammal Training Program, or as I'm going to call it, MMT, to develop methods of teaching marine animals to perform aquatic tasks that are just kind of difficult for humans to do.
The Navy Marine Mammal Program began in 1959 with a single dolphin. Over the decades, it's grown to become the world's third largest holder of marine mammals, about twice the size of any single marine park. Partnering with the animals, the Navy created its marine mammal systems to do what others can't. Jobs too tough for men or machine alone.
And they have a bunch of sea creatures. They use seals, they use sea lions, they have a couple of dolphins on staff. And they're also like super vague about what they have them do. They're just kind of patrolling the water, and finding landmines, attaching cables to things for some reason. One thing that I would like to know about the MMT video that I showed you, and this may seem super obvious to anyone who works in research or intelligence, but I don't know, might be missed by just like your casual viewer. The video has an intelligence marking on it. Did you see it at the bottom? It says like distribution A, distribution unlimited brackets released, something like that. So that is an intelligence marking. And intelligence markings are a way of classifying documents that contain sensitive information. You know, the stuff that you don't want your enemies to see, because if it says secret on there, they're just going to respect that and not read it whatsoever. Okay, obviously it's designed for people in-house to know who they can and can't share it with, but you get what I'm saying. Now, these markings are kind of subject to, I guess you could call it erosion. So something that's deemed to be like top secret in 1963 is probably going to be declassified or at least downgraded to like confidential today. Unless, of course, it's like really, really sensitive, you know, like what happened to Marilyn Monroe or Tupac or the first Avril Lavigne, because we ain't never knowing that. But the reason that I bring this up and that I've gone on this slight tangent is because the inclusion of an unclassified intelligence grading on this video indicates that as a part of the military, the MMT follow standard, US grading systems for their documents. And so, by extrapolation, we can assume that there are almost certainly documents out there that are graded like secret and top secret, just detailing the activities of the US's 2nd Sea Lion Battalion. Officer Sinful Finn reporting for duty. And I'm sorry, but the idea of a new chief of staff taking over and then just being given like an A4 lever arch full of top secret documents about a mission undertaken by a bunch of SEALs is really fucking funny to me. Okay, so buried just towards the end of that MMT video is this line.
Whether they are marking the location of an undersea mine, attaching recovered hardware to equipment at depth, or interdicting an underwater intruder, the Navy's Dolphins and Sea Lions are more than just sensors. Marine mammal systems complete the entire detect-to-engage chain of events.
And did you catch the word interdict? I like that word. Interdict. Meaning to intercept the movement of a prohibited commodity or person, which is basically saying that if you are an underwater intruder into US seas, if you're like an underwater Chinese spy balloon, you best believe that Officer Sinful Finn will catch you. And he will slap you with his flippers. And it will be very uncomfortable. Alright, so a little bit more seriously, as far as I can see, there haven't been many publicly noted achievements in this area. You know, how like sometimes a police dog will get a Medal of Honor for saving a family of 11 from a gas explosion caused by a bunch of witches in a sea cave. That type of thing. I haven't seen any SEALs or any sea lions getting commendations for saving ships or anything fun like that, which is kind of a shame. Because even a carrier pigeon in like World War I or something got a bunch of medals for delivering some messages when it had its foot blown off. And then as an achievement after death, it got stuffed and put in the Smithsonian, which is ultimately what I think it wanted. And maybe it's just like the Navy likes to say hush about these type of things, but I don't know, if you're gonna do it for police dogs, why not do it for a walrus? Seems a little bit rude. But anyways, the US aren't the only ones training creatures of the deep blue sea to protect and sever, because of course, if the US have sea lions, then Russia needs fucking whales. On April 22nd, 2019, fishermen off the coast of Norway found a beluga whale who was repeatedly rubbing itself against boat hulls to try and dislodge a yellow harness that had been strapped to its back. The harness apparently had a clip for mounting a camera and the words "Property of St. Petersburg" just etched on the back of it. And reports noted that a very similar yellow harness had been seen on a sea lion trained by the Russian Navy back in 2018. A couple of days later, the whale was then lured with cod fillets by a fisherman who then jumped in the water and got the harness off its back. And since then, it has become widely believed, although not confirmed, that the whale escaped from a Russian military training program that is, I guess, training whales and other sea mammals to like surveil Scandinavian waters. And for anyone who's wondering, well, that was like 2019, so what happened to the whale? About 4 days before I started filming this video, the Norwegian government put out a message asking people to kindly stop feeding the spy whale. Apparently it's just been living there for 4 years and people have called it Vladimir and they, I don't know, feed it tuna. And the government is like, please, we know it's cute, but stop feeding the spy whale. I hate it when you have to tell people that explicitly. Then later in 2022, the US Naval Institute released an article entitled "Trained Russian Dolphins Are Protecting Black Sea Naval Base." And they include these satellite images of these like big fuck-off dolphin pens right in the middle of Sevastopol Harbor. And I guess for context, for those of you who, are not staying abreast of the current conflict, Sevastopol is like the biggest city in Crimea, which has been annexed by Russia and has this really big port right in the middle of the Black Sea, which, is supposed to be smack dab in Ukrainian territory, but Russia wants it, so I guess it's just theirs now. So what does all this mean? Well, technically it means that dolphins and other sea mammals are now being actively used in conflict, which is great. And I'm just really, really, really hoping that in a couple of years we don't get headlines that are like, human remains fed to dolphins after siege of insert Ukrainian city here. That would be terrible. I'm sure that's not gonna happen, but and I know you're probably thinking, well, this seems just like a little too coincidental. Russia aren't just gonna slap a property of Russia sticker on their fucking spy whale. Come on. Well, it seems that Russia aren't really too shy about admitting this. And in fact, much like the US, Russia actually have their own institute for the training of sea mammals for naval purposes. It's called the Murmansk Sea Biology Institute. And their website pretty plainly notes that they conduct, quote, projects on the exploitation of living and non-living resources of the continental shelf and coastal zone. So yeah, dolphins and shit. The Murmansk website is also doubly funny if you're a Brit who reads it, because when you translate it into English, the website notes that they are the most northern research institute dealing with basic knowledge and applications of modern marine biology. And obviously it means the northernmost geographically, but in the UK, it just conjures up a bunch of ideas of like a couple of lads from Manchester and Newcastle sitting around talking about fish. Give me Geordie Shore, but make it aquatic.
If the Eiffel Tower was a
fish,
I'd let it come all over my face.
Chapter 3. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Oh my god, the government made a fucking robot Beetlejuice. Okay, so we've chatted about cats, dolphins, and sea lions. Oh my. Now it's time to talk about one of the most interesting and one of the most insidious things I've ever read. And I'm not gonna lie, researching this made me feel a little bit sick and a little bit uncomfortable, but it's super fucking interesting, so strap on in, bitch. The US Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review, or DOPSR, is the agency responsible for running the Department of Defense's Security Review Program. Remember, we talked about intelligence grading earlier? Well, these people will decide what within a report that's going out to the public as a result of freedom of information or data retention laws need to be redacted or, can't be released whatsoever. So a lot of really important documents go through this office. Buried within the trove of documents that they release is a spreadsheet called FOIA Log FY15, which I found and extracted and reviewed as part of my research for this video. And in row 1159 are details pertaining to a Freedom of Information request lodged by a Susan Murray. Marriott? I'm gonna say Murray because it sounds nicer, but it could be Marriott. So, who the fuck is Susan Murray? According to her professional biography, Dr. Susan Murray is a former academic librarian with experience in government documents and science reference. Dr. Murray's teaching and interdisciplinary research focuses on the sociology of knowledge and information policy, particularly secrecy, censorship, privacy, freedom of expression, information rights as human rights, and technology. That's just a super long way of saying that she's a nosy bitch. So if she's putting in a Freedom of Information request, You know it's gonna be juicy. In December 2015, Murray put in a request for information regarding DARPA's role in the development and application of hybrid insect microelectromechanical systems and general microelectromechanical HIMEM systems. Oh my god, that is the most syllables I've ever had the displeasure of having to pronounce one after the other. Kinda hurt my mouth. Wow, wow, wow. And for those of you who hate acronyms, kind of like me, DARPA is the Defense ARPA. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. DARPA. Yeah, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. That one.
The mission of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, is to make pivotal investments in breakthrough technologies for national security. The genesis of that mission and of DARPA itself dates to the launch of Sputnik in 1957, and a commitment by the United States that, from that time forward, it would be the initiator and not the victim of strategic technological surprises.
So Susie goes ahead and she pops in this request, and about a year later, it's granted, and she then releases the 88-page document that was sent to her by Dopser. And I have read the entirety of this document, and it is wild. I'll put a link to it in the description of this video, but if you're squeamish and if you don't like bugs, this is your only warning. Do not read this. The document is entitled Micro Air Vehicles Special Challenges presented to the DARPA Airplane on a Chip Workshop, Arlington, Virginia, 2006. So basically, DARPA put out a call to all these research universities and institutions and said, hey, do some research into things that fly, but that are small, and like, come in and show us what you got. There I am, I'm reading this document, and it's like, blah, 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 microchips, blah, 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 drones, blah, 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 gyroscopes, and then bam, all of a sudden, insect cyborgs. Get ready, fuckers. So the document explores a series of experiments done on pupae, which is the non-feeding, usually immobile transformation stage between larva and imago, with imago being the last stage that an insect attains during its metamorphosis. I told you bitches that I have my glasses on today. This is science time. Think of it like Pokemon. You've got Caterpie as the larva, Kakuna as the pupa, and then Butterfree as the imago. And the only reason I said pupa instead of pupae is that pupae is the plural of pupa. And also, I guess in real life, the imago in this instance is a moth, so maybe it should have been Venomoth. But like in Pokemon, Venonat evolves directly into Venomoth and there is no pupa, so I mean, I guess it doesn't really work, but don't make me rewrite this Gen 1 Pokemon analogy. Anyway, we see that this DARPA program managed to reliably embed microsystems into pupae in order to control insects. On the screen now are the different stages of an experiment on this. So on the far left, we have a normal pupa, then we have a pupa cut in half, and we see that this will still develop into a moth. Then we have a pupa cut in half with a hormone tube inserted into it, and it still grows into a moth. And finally, we have a tube inserted with a chemical blocking ball, and nothing happens because it can't get the hormones that it needs in order to transition. We also see that they managed to adapt this same idea and embed microchips into pupae, and that they will still turn into moths. The document doesn't explicitly state what this does to the moths, but a tagline on the slide does read, "We have proven successful platform insertion in pupa stage without affecting flight or lifetime, ready for locomotion control payloads." I mean, the microchips are clearly meant to assist in delivering something, but I wonder what? Oh, wait, silly me, never mind. The next side is called Hybrid Insect MEMS, with MEMS being micro electromechanical systems, complete with pheromone ejectors and a payload of 0.05 to 5 grams. Put it all together, and we have microchipped insects with payload ejectors of 0.05 to 5 grams. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to be used to inject people with venom, but if I did, you could see how I got there, right? Especially when the slide ends with summary. Integration of MEMS with nature, e.g. insects, could provide methods to realize cyborgs that might require unique AOC capabilities, with AOC in this context meaning aeroplane on a chip. So big thing, small package. That's my nickname in high school. And if you're sat there thinking that souping up moths to be the equivalent of a blow dart sounds kind of shady, it's about to get worse. Because the presentation then talks about hybrid insect MEMS, with the vision of creating technology to reliably integrate microsystem payloads into insects, thereby creating insect cyborgs. And notes that their objective is to demonstrate MEMS platforms for effective locomotion control, power harvesting from insects, and to eliminate extraneous biological functions, which in layman's terms means to develop technologies to control the movement and flights of insects and also override any of their biological control centers. They are literally creating a techno-parasite direct manipulation function. And then the next slide just says, questions. And I'm like, yes, about 100 of them. But before we get there, at the very end of the disclosure, there's an academic paper entitled MEMS-based bioelectronic neuromuscular interfaces for insect cyborg flight control. The first sentence of which reads, this paper reports the first direct control of insect flight by manipulating the wing motion via microprobes and electronics introduced through the early metamorphosis insertion technology. So, do you remember earlier when I was like, why are they inserting microchips into pupae? What is that gonna do? Well, it's so that when the pupa develops into a moth, the muscle tissue will develop around the microchip and it will be directly embedded into the moth, essentially allowing someone to remote control it. And in fact, the results section of this paper notes, phased actuation of probes with biphasic pulses allowed us to control wing motion highly selectively. Upstroke and downstroke actuation on one or both wings were demonstrated with power consumption of as low as 10 microwatts. So picture this, you're a baby, right? And you have a standard operation. Maybe you have your appendix removed. You grow up, you're 21, and you're going for a run. You start jogging. And then all of a sudden, electrical impulses start firing throughout your legs because of a microchip that some dude inserted into you when you weren't fully developed. And your mind cannot physically control these impulses or fight back against it, and they can control you by manipulating these impulses. They can make you turn left, they can make you turn right, they can make you walk off a fucking cliff. I know that's a bit hyperbolic, and I know that that's like the nth degree here, but when you put all of these things together, you kind of have to ask why? Because sometimes weird science can have interesting practical applications. Like that time they grew an ear on a rat. Is it immediately apparent what that's for? No, but potentially if the ear is anatomically correct and, you know, if there's a person missing a part of their ear that could be transplanted from that grown ear and it can make them hear again, then I could see it. Or with this electrical impulse thing that controls the moth's flight pattern, potentially stimulating an electrical impulse in the muscle tissue of a human can help it react. It may allow people to regain muscle movement without pain. I could maybe see that working. But when you add it together with the other stuff that they've done in this very same document, putting it on insects, making it as small as possible, inserting it into them so that they can directly control them, and making it so that they had payloads of up to 5 grams. Like, it all starts to seem a little bit sinister, right? Call me a pessimist, but I can't really see any way that having a fleet of remote-controlled bugs that can inject people with stuff is gonna be used for good. And having just lived through COVID, we all know that one bitch who would have done it. Like, that one bitch who was so concerned about the entire thing that she would have been like, you know what, release the remote bugs. Release the remote bugs and make them take Pfizer. I mean, I have my vaccinations, I'm just saying. There's one crazy bitch who's gonna take it too far. The report ends by saying, this work paves the way for future engineering approaches to utilize the bioelectronic interfaces, especially for realizing insect cyborgs. And that was in 2006. So let's have a look at where we are today. In 2016, so a decade later, scientists working on a DARPA project, so the exact same project, announced that they had managed to create a fully remote-controlled giant cyborg beetle by attaching a microchip to its brain, and then, in front of a conference full of people, sat down at a computer and made it fly around the room for their entertainment.
Our purpose to control the flight of the beetle. I studied many things about the kind of muscle configuration, neural network of this living beetle, and also I studied leg control.
This is also by stimulating the muscles.
Yes, leg muscles, and we can do some of the different walking gait motion.
You stimulate all the muscles individually. So the beetle actually has no control over what it's doing.
Yeah.
Then. So you basically make it into a robot, actually.
Like a robot. Of course, some error, but that error is not so big problem.
I hate it here.
Oh, and just in case you were thinking, well, I mean, that microchip is gonna run out of battery sooner or later, so it won't be a Franken beetle forever. No. In 2022, a DARPA researcher announced that they had made them solar-powered. Solar-powered cyborg beetles. How environmentally friendly. You can view some of these experiments on YouTube, and the comment section is quite alive to a lot of the ethical considerations that come into play when you're overriding a sentient creature's biological control functions. And there's one line in one of the experiments that really struck a nerve, I guess, with me. It's in a video by Motherboard entitled "The Cyborg Beetles Designed to Save Human Lives," which is that when these electrical impulses are going off to control their movement, they struggle, but they still obey.
It struggles itself, but it still obeys the stimulation signals.
And do you think, is he struggling to kind of stop these stimulation signals?
Yes, I think so, but still it obeys. You
Yeah?
can see.
I don't know, maybe I'm just being oversensitive, but do you remember at the beginning of this video when we talked about birds aren't real? Personally, I don't think it's that far of a stretch to go from solar-powered cyborg beetles to solar-powered cyborg beetles with a small camera on them. And with how small digital technologies and especially camera technologies are getting, it's really only a matter of time. And I have no doubt that in the very near future, we will see a cyborg beetle controlling a dolphin with a GoPro attached to it, rushing into battle against a bunch of microphoned cats. And doesn't that just sound like a great anime? So that's pretty much it. I know I've kind of questioned a lot of the decisions made by military authorities throughout this video, but the question of why we do things is really quite important to me. But at least with the dolphins and the sea creatures, I can kind of understand the intent, and I can kind of see why they would be needed, because I guess technology just isn't quite there yet. But if I'm being completely honest, the stuff with the bugs just kind of fucked me up. And quite frankly, outside of some very specific situations, maybe like, I don't know, someone's legs got blown off and you're trying to work on prosthetic, I really don't think that we as humans should ever be remote controlling other sentient beings against their will. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Maybe I've just played Devourer in Mortal Kombat too much to be comfortable with the idea of killer bugs. It kind of grosses me out. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I put out new deep dives into ridiculous topics every 2 weeks. And until next time, as always, kisses from England. Bye guys!